Hey, it's really great to be here. When Steve asked me to be a part of this event, I was, well, the word is honored, and that's true. Anytime I get to speak with or talk to a group of leaders about leadership and about their role and about the impact they can have, I'm truly honored to do that. And I appreciate that you took time and energy to invest in yourself, to invest in your growth, to invest in the development of your group or your team or your organization, whether it's a church or a nonprofit or the other places you lead, like in the home, or sometimes it's in a community service organization, but you've stepped up and taken the role of leadership, and some things come with that. And with it comes responsibility and the need to have personal growth. And I'm excited to be with you, glad I can speak with you, and excited that you would, again, carve out some time to be part of this event and be part of this particular session. I've been working with leaders for about 35 years or so in their active training and development. I've always felt a sense of sort of wonder and awe at the impact that a leader can have. Not because I'm trying to elevate leadership to some unnatural or super high level, but just to recognize the nature of what it is when someone is tapped to be a guide or to point people in a direction or to give some vision or bring some encouragement or move people toward a goal. Anytime that happens, there's some leadership stuff happening, and we got to get better at it. We have to do it well, and we have to reply to the call on us that's made. Hey, step up and be a leader. So, will we reply to that and go, yes, I'm prepared? Or maybe I'm not prepared, but I'm willing to be prepared. Help me along the way. So I'm encouraged that you're with me, and I'm encouraged that you're with us and taking part in this. I want you to think for a moment about your first leadership role. Was it in a school? Was it in a neighborhood? Maybe you were the person that everyone followed around. But I'm thinking a little bit more formal, maybe student government or a team. But was there a particular thing where you realized suddenly you were the leader? Now, someone tried to get me in a leadership role when I was in my early high school years, more like maybe middle school. Teacher said, you should run for student government. You should be class president, whatever. And I said, no, thank you. That's not me. I'm not that kind of person. And I remember her saying, look, just all you got to do is get up in front of the assembly, say a few words, and then see just if people vote for you or not. I think it was pretty clear that I didn't want to do it. Even my slogan was lame. It was like, Donahue, he's for you. He's your man in 72. Dates me a little bit, but it just shows you that I didn't want the job, and needless to say, I didn't get it. But a few years later, I was tapped on the shoulder during off-season workouts in football. And it was our junior year, and it was winter, and we had finished our season, and the coach had started an off-season workout program. It was kind of new to us, and you can tell I'm a bit dated when I mention it here, but not a lot of teams were doing that kind of thing. We had purchased some new equipment, and so after school, if you weren't in a sport or an activity of some kind, it was, hey, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, be in the weight room. We're going to do some running drills ahead of time. He came up to me and he said, Bill, I want you to lead this off-season workout thing. I thought, oh, okay. He says, because frankly, I'm thinking about you being a captain of our team next year. And I remember hearing that and thinking, me? I mean, it wasn't the fastest, strongest, best player by far on the team. I think I was good, but to be thought of as a captain and to be tapped, so to speak, and to step up that way. And I think even more importantly, in that moment, and this is like February, long before the season, it was lead this group of people through these stations, through this workout for 40 to 50 minutes, 3 times a week. Because at the time, coaches couldn't be in the room a part of that. That would be like coaching. It was kind of illegal. So he said, I need you. And he tapped a couple other guys to lead this thing. I remember going home that day and having these thoughts. Will I show up? Can I do this? Will I deliver? And I felt the weight, if you will, even in this small little setting, the weight and responsibility of leadership. Suddenly realized I was going to be a role model. If I wanted other people in the room to grow and develop, I had to grow and develop. If I wanted them to be better, I had to get better. Now, one of the reasons I didn't jump at the opportunity, at least internally, and again, I remember feeling shocked by it, was an event that happened earlier that year during our junior year season. While we were having another terrible season, I was chosen to be defensive captain of the week. I don't know why we rotated it every week. You had to learn the signals and make these calls. But I learned the signals, so I look on the sidelines and coach would make some hand signals and I would step in and say 50 middle or 50 straight or whatever our code language was. And I remember doing that and learning that and feeling good about that. About an hour and a half or two after that game ended, or during that game, and the game came to an end, gratefully it came to an end, we walked over and got on our bus. Now, it was a home game. It was Parents' Weekend, and we lost 53-0. I was defensive captain of the week, and we lost 53-0. We had to take a bus because a new high school was built about a mile away. Everything was fine there, but they hadn't built the fields yet. So we were using the fields for the old school. So we got on the bus. I sat in the back seat, humiliated, sweaty, hot, dirty. I'm sure footprints across my chest from the opposing team. And I sat there, and across the aisle and a seat in front was my friend Paul, my best friend. He looked the same, humiliated, exhausted. Two seniors got in front of us and sat in the chair in front of the bus seat in front of us. One turned to the other and said, "Where's the party tonight?" And I remember in that moment something happened. It was like, I don't want to be those guys. I never want to think like they think. I never want to be the person thinking about we're going to party after a game. We lost 53-0, and it meant nothing to them. So, roll the tape forward a few months when Coach tapped me on the shoulder and said, "I'm thinking about you leading." That wasn't just that year. We went, I think, a romping 2-8 that year, and 1-9 the year before that, and 1-9 the year before that, and 1-9 the year before that. It was sort of like if we won a game, that there was a parade. And I thought, I'm leading this, and I didn't mean that in a shameful way. I just thought, am I a person that could do anything to help turn this around? But I remember that getting tapped, and suddenly everything changed. It's like a little switch or a trigger went. And I realize that's kind of a high school sports setting, but I do want you to think about your leadership role. And I want you to think about the time someone tapped you on the shoulder and said, could you lead a group? Could you lead a team? Could you step up and help us? And maybe you said, me? And they said, yeah, you. And you felt for a season there the gravity of that. You felt responsibility. You felt, wow, I'm special, but not arrogant special. I'm special in that eyes will now turn to me. People will now watch me. People will want to learn from me. And I felt the weight of responsibility of leadership. So I want to honor you for taking on that mantle at any level that you take it, from home to work to church to whatever, and say, it's a big thing. I remember feeling that for the first time, and many times since when someone said, can you lead something? I think that how we view leadership and how we see ourselves as people of transformation and change is so vital. Many years ago, a friend of mine gave a talk, and in his talk he made this comment: it takes a changing life to change a life. It takes a changing life to change a life. I thought, that's so true. It's hard to expect a group, an organization, a team to grow and develop if its leaders aren't growing and developing. If its members aren't growing and developing and helping each other, as the proverb says, iron sharpening iron. And when I think of not just life change individually, I think of leadership culture. There is a culture of leadership in any organization, in any group, in any gathering of people that come together where a few leaders shape that culture. Now that culture is shaped by things like environment. What's the vibe of that? You can almost tell when you walk into a room, what's the vibe? What's the sort of thing that you're feeling as you step into that? What's the EQ of it emotionally? Are people sort of calm? Is it open? Is it engaging? Is it free-flowing? Or does it feel a little tight or heavy or awkward? Or you can walk into a setting and kind of get a feel, what I'll call, about the environment of that group or that gathering. Another thing that contributes to, I'll call it, leadership culture is the beliefs of the leaders. What they believe about change and success, the deeply held things, the convictions that they have, influences and shapes culture. Another one is the words that are used. You can kind of hear it. Are they negative? Are they crass? Are people always cutting each other down? Or is it upbeat? Is it enthusiastic? Are the words being used just loose jargon thrown around in cliches? Or is there some thought or meaning to what people are talking about? Words can shape the culture. Other things like attitudes, up versus down, positive versus negative, behaviors, particularly the behaviors of leaders under two conditions: when given authority and under stress. I do a lot of leadership development work across the board. When I'm working with people, it could be in the marketplace, could be anywhere. One of the assessments we take reveals a level of how a person is likely to act when they're under stress. And that stress can come from overuse of strengths, fatigue, just feeling overwhelmed. But the point is, what happens in those moments when pressure is put on a leader tells you a lot about that leader. As does when you give someone authority. Now do they act like, hey, I got authority now? Or is there a humility that they receive, so to speak, with that authority? That impacts the culture. Choices leaders make with time and money impact a culture. If they squander it, if they're not thoughtful, that impacts a leadership and a team culture. The values, not just the written ones, but the unwritten ones. Unwritten values like the people that give the most money get the most weight of decision-making power. I don't see that written anywhere, but it happens, doesn't it? So what are the written and unwritten or underlying values in any particular group of people? The rituals that they do and celebrate, key events that they have, iconic people they remember, the story of the organization or the group or the team. The point is, lots of things come together to impact or change leadership culture. So I spent time not long ago with a team, and it was in different kinds of settings. There were groups of 2 or 3 of us, and then groups of 5 to 10, group of about 40 or 50. What I noticed in each setting, almost regardless of size, is that a few leaders impacted all the other leaders. How they thought, how they contributed, how they responded to questions, how they handled conflict. These few impacted the many. And that's why it's so important for you to feel this sense of, as leaders in whatever, again, organization you're in, a church or others that many of you wear multiple hats. When you're in that sort of leadership circle of that, your few things can impact many things. Your few people can impact many people. So I think there's time for a change for a lot of our leadership cultures. Maybe we helped create some negative leadership culture. We didn't know it, maybe. We didn't intend to, but we did. But I think we're all tired of, regardless of the arena we look at, from politics to sports to business to education and go on with it, we're tired of leadership that's toxic and narcissistic and self-righteous and greedy and power-driven and all of those kinds of things. And we're ready to kind of say, enough. But it's not enough to go, oh, look over there, let's call that out. I got to look in that mirror and call me out. I've got to begin that leadership change with me. So I want to talk about 3 essentials that'll help us in our leadership change, our leadership development, our leadership growth, that as we do them individually as leaders, they will help us impact other leaders and change the leadership culture. First, mining our story. To mine, M-I-N-E, to mine your leadership story. By looking at how you've led in the past, by looking at what you've done in the past, by looking at how past events and other things impact you, tells you a lot about your leadership now and going forward. I want to just focus on a few of those things. And the first one in mining our story is looking back at our decisions. And I mean the big ones, the important ones, the ones that have some gravity to them. So think for a moment, what kind of decision making have you made where a lot of things culminate in ultimately that moment where you say yes or no, or let's invest this money, or let's hire this person, or let's declare this vision that's going to change the direction of where we go. What came into that? Let's look at a few things. What was the process you went through? What was your decision making process? Did you go talk to people right away? Did you weigh in on your emotions? Is it a decision process that's influenced a lot by that, by how you feel about things? Did you talk to mentors or experts? Did you gather information that you read? Did you go online? Did you get documents? What did you do to look at the process you went through to make this decision that's so important? Are you a pro-con person and weighing things out? Or does it reflect more your style? I tend to see people in sort of 3 kind of styles: gut, heart, or head, right? There's gut leaders that just, at some point they say, this just feels right deep down to me. I mean, just something tells me intuitively this is the right direction, or this is the right move, or this is the right person. Then there's heart people who have more of that emotional connection to the decision. It's a sense of it feels just or righteous or better for the most, better for the people, better, There's something about it touches my heart, and I resonate deeply with it in that sense. So it's not just an intuitive thing, it's more of a feeling, an emotive, energizing kind of decision. And for others, it's the head. It's heavily influenced by data. We're tired of, frankly, sometimes gut people just saying, hey, let's just kind of play it by ear. Saying, can we have some data too? Can we do some research? Can we ask some questions? Can we talk to others who've had success or failure with this before we pull the trigger? So I want you to go back and look at key decisions you've made, particularly with a view toward your leadership role that you were in the workplace, whether it was profit, nonprofit, all the different avenues I mentioned. How are you as a decision maker, and what has influenced them? And when you look at that process, ask the question, is it the best process? Can I learn from others? Have I cut some things short? So the first part of it is decisions about process. Second, I mentioned style. Third is speed. How quickly do you make big decisions? Sometimes we're forced into making big decisions quickly. But as a pattern, what is the pacing and speed? Do you rush into it, or do you use all the time that you have? I tend to be a person that says, how long do I have to make that decision? 2 weeks or 2 hours? I mean, what is it? When do you need to know? Because I really would like to sit with it. I'd like to get as much information. I'd like to use as many methods as possible. But not everyone's like that. Some people feel like, if I don't put a deadline on sort of like 48 hours or whatever, I won't do the work needed to really make this, and I'll get backed up, and it'll be the day before and I haven't made the decision yet. So they like to do it more quickly. How do you do it? And what is the impact of those big decisions in your leadership, in your life, and the work that you do? So when you go back and go to school on those 2, 3, 4 really big decisions, what happened as a result of it? What was good about it? What could have been better about it? Was there a failure? Did you learn from the failure? Or did you kind of gloss it over? Did you kind of just move on and say, oh, well, what did you do? And then finally, as you think of that, would you do it again? And can you own what happened? Can you take responsibility for it, pro and con? Decisions, we like to say, are the things we make, and then they make us. So I really want you to go to school on that. So take some time, not right now, obviously, but as you journal, as you sit, as you reflect, look at these things in your leadership life. And is there any learning you can pull into the present from your decision-making aspect of your leadership story? Another thing to mine in your story are the key relationships that you've impacted. Yes, there are relationships that have impacted you, to be clear. I mean, look at that. How have people mentored you, influenced you, etc.? I'm talking about here is what some call the wake we leave. How's it like to be around me? And the way I like to say is that, what's it like when I leave the room? I remember working with a senior leader at a large insurance company, and we were talking, and she was an amazing leader, and we were talking about leadership. We were talking about how she leads, and she made this comment about a fellow leader. And this woman had been like a senior vice president and had taken a job at a new company. And she said, I'll tell you this, if I get a phone call from her, I'm there in a heartbeat. I'm like, wow, you have a pretty good role here. Why would you do that? She said this, I would follow her anywhere she went. I thought, wow, you would pick up family, you would do, make these changes to be in your work environment, at least around that kind of leader. And we unpacked briefly what the reasons were behind wanting to follow that leader anywhere, and all the good things you could think of were there. And so it reminded me that there was such power in the relationship that that leader had. And here's what the interesting thing was when we mentioned this particular leader. We had been in the room together. The three of us had been. And now that she was not in the room, and this person was singing her praises. You've probably been in rooms when a leader leaves and people go, or have some reaction like, enough of that, or wow, what was that about? And it's not exactly an exciting thing when they come back in, right? You're like, oh no, I hope we get through the next hour. And they don't have to be off the scale crazy, but it can be just that they ignore people, they talk over people, they don't listen well, they have their own agenda, and they just move it forward without much concern for other people's input. Those kinds of things can sap the energy out of a room. The leadership energy will leave the room. So what kind of relationship do you have? Who are the people that you influence the most, and what's your influence like? Do you leave a good wake the kind that you can put a surfboard on and kind of ride, or is it one that knocks people over? And it's manipulative and power-oriented and shame-filled. It really does make a difference. And I'm going to add this one little illustration to make a point. You can't be just okay 80% of the time and then horrible 20% of the time. It's not like a scale. I was working with a leader who had a real gregarious personality, and when you saw him in the hallway, he would kind of give you kind of want to give you a hug if that was appropriate, or high five, or it was like, hey, great to see you. How's your team doing? Awesome, great to see you. That was his sort of culture. And you could see him in a distance coming. He'd see you and smile, and you think, great. And I'm going to say it this way: Monday, awesome, hug, high five. Tuesday, awesome, hug, high five. Wednesday, same thing. Thursday, same thing. Friday, this guy walks up, punches you in the face, cracks your nose. Okay, whoa, it's Saturday, you're waking up and you're thinking back on your week, and you're thinking of, let's call him Greg. You're thinking of Greg. What are you thinking about with Greg? Monday? Wednesday? No, you're thinking Friday. Friday, Greg punched you in the nose. Making a point, right? An obvious point maybe. It doesn't take much. Doesn't matter that 40 out of the 50 hours that week, it's great to be around Greg. Those other 10 hours can be toxic, can be demeaning. He can have a switch go and a trigger go, and suddenly now he's angry and frustrated and he's blaming. And that room you walk out of and you go, whoa, what happened? What happened? Now, we all have a propensity toward those episodic moments where some triggers go. We have to go to school on those. I help leaders do that. What is it that makes you turn from a fairly reasonable person to suddenly an angry, negative, or demeaning kind of person? It's destroying your leadership. Don't let it happen. And then finally, defining moments in our story. It may be personal, communal, I like to say, like with a group you're with, or vocational, specifically at work. But moments influence us, key things. I remember one day my wife came to me and said, have you ever processed the deaths that you've experienced in your relationships? I said, okay. I kind of knew what she was saying. She said, no, think back. Best friends, close friends, near relationships, family members. Do you realize there was a season there where it was just like over a 10 or 15 year period, there was a lot of death around you. And I said, I didn't process a lot of that because in my family, and I did have a really strong family in many ways, but we didn't know how to do grief or death or loss or pain. We tend to sweep things under the carpet. And so when there was death, it was like we went, okay, do the funeral, but let's quick move on and pretend like, okay, what are we doing this week? And I realized what that had done to me over time is it had an impact on me as a leader. It made me fearful of conflict. I didn't like to hear bad news. Maybe I saw it on the surface, saw some data, but deep down, I really didn't want to process it. And if we could get past it fast, I didn't want to dig into it and find out why. And I want you to look at, are there things in your personal story as you look back that affect your leadership story? Are there things in the communal or team-based or group-based environment that happened? Like a whole group gets laid off, a whole team loses their job together in an organization. And suddenly, here we are all together. Or we have this great moment together that influences all of us as a group, where we achieve a victory or a goal, or we celebrate an initiative that turned out just great, and we're excited about that. But these moments, either personally in a group or specifically at work, like I said, maybe it was a downsizing kind of thing, or maybe it was a promotion, and now you suddenly have authority and power. Look back at those in your story and see, how did that influence me? So pull back, mine your leadership story. I spent more time on that because digging into the past isn't always fun. And a lot of us just think, well, it's behind us, let's move on. It doesn't go away. We need to look at it in appropriate ways and mine it. Mine those decisions. What can we learn from them? Mine those key relationships we have. What can we learn? Look at the moments that influence me. What can I learn from that? The second thing, in addition to mining our story, is cultivating our soul. This is the present. If the story is the past, the soul is the present. Who are you now? What's going on in you? Where's the energy in you go? How do you feel about yourself and your life and your relationships? What is happening at the soul level? One of my mentors through the years did some teaching, and he named 6 or 7 of these kinds of areas that are detrimental to the soul. They cause erosion of the soul, which is why I'm using that sort of agricultural metaphor of cultivating. He said, if you get caught up in these things, the soul will erode. And here's some warning signs that could be happening, that you're drifting. I'm going to just name 3. First one that he mentioned was busyness without purpose. This is activity without a strategy, movement without a destination. It's just busyness, but there's no purpose to it. So we're doing things, we're having activity, we're having meetings, we're doing our every Tuesday we always do this. And no one pulls back and says, why? Why do we have that meeting? Why is it 2 hours? What do we really get from it? Do we need all those people in there? No one looks at the busy things we do just out of routine and wonders, what's the purpose behind them? Is it achieving what we're doing? Are we involved in activities or ministries or things in our community? Or are we just doing things sort of with the status quo business as usual, but it's just a lot of busyness? No one's really looked at it and seen what's purposeful in it, if there's any there at all. So am I caught up with that? Just a lot of activity that doesn't have strategic importance. And I'm primarily talking about most of our work-related roles here, not other kinds of relationships. Second one was relationships without reciprocity. Relationships without a return. All give, no receive. All help, no be helped. And when you're in ministry, where you're in healthcare, when you're in service sector things, where you're a parent of a young kid, it's all on the give side, or a high percentage of it is. And you don't get a lot of relationships that are on the receive side. And you don't notice it initially, but my wife and I experienced this in a setting where over time we realized, and it was a new role we had moved into, and it caused a move. We had to move and join go to a new place. And all our initial relationships were on the give side. We got around people who needed support, needed help. Some were going through just personal crises, like one was going through a divorce. Others are just constantly in need of help and support. And part of our role and some things we were doing, it was kind of our job to stay connected there. And all that's good. It's just that because we were new in the area, our first 5 or 10 relationships were there. And suddenly we just felt so exhausted, and we started to take stock of that. We realized we have not yet, because of all that activity, been able to develop relationships that are reciprocal, where someone feeds us as much as we help them. Or maybe sometimes they just build into us and we can walk away, and they're okay with that. They don't need anything in return. So this idea of mutual kind of caring is important, and not filling my whole life with what this person called VDPs, very draining people. He wasn't being pejorative. He was just saying it's the nature of the relationship. They're always on the take because they either have to be or they don't know how else to relate. Third is calendar without margin, so that we have our dates and everything scheduled, but you have no space in there, no place where we say mine. No one gets that. It's my most important appointment, and it's with me. So cultivating my soul needs me to make sure I'm not just drifting into busyness or relationships that are all draining, or a constant calendar that's filled with no margin for me to have space and solitude and prayer and stepping back and quietness and what I need to refill. That my most important meeting may be that week with me, and I will guard it like I'm meeting with the president of something, and we would certainly make room for it. So mine our story, cultivate our soul, and finally form a strategy, a development strategy. And I guide leaders through this as I work with them in whatever environment they're in on how to move forward. I was working with both a pastor and a brain surgeon during the same period of time, and both had the same need, but I was struck with the brain surgeon, who is one of the tops in our country in neurotechnology on how to remove tumors using technology. Just an amazing person. He has about 20 projects going at any given time. I remember talking with him about a few he was working on this given week. And I said, what projects are you working on? He named 3 or 4. And I said, well, you missed one. And he kind of chuckled, like, how would you know what I'm working on? And I was coaching him and helping him grow as a leader, but I didn't hang around him to know all the work he was doing. And I said, no, I didn't hear you mention Project Me. And he said, what? I said, Project Me. I said, look, here's what I hear from you. When you articulate what you're doing in a particular project, you think about these things. What's the purpose of it? How do I define success? What time and energy goes into it? Is it fully resourced? How do we get feedback about it? Do we have the right people around it? You see where I'm going with this. Put yourself in that list. Am I devoting the right time to it? Am I getting the right resources I need? Do I have the right people around me? Am I articulating things and doing things in a way that use my energy or abuse my energy? Where is it on my priority list? When he saw himself as a project, so to speak, he had a new way of looking at his own growth and development and the time he needed for that. That illustration may or may not help you, but you get the idea. The idea is to have a strategy and have a plan for self-development that also, as kind of similar to what I just talked about, is personal, relational, or communal with others and about your work. Do I have a personal growth sort of plan that helps me think about my next steps? Where should I invest my time and energy in my growth in sense of reading, listening, learning? What kind of environments would I grow and develop in? Where would I get that in a group of people? And I'm in a small group of people that exchange ideas and support, and we can bounce things off of. Do I have that from the team I work with? Are we feeding each other in the process? And what's my strategy for how I engage my work so that I bring the best of who I am in the time I'm given there, and I don't overdo it so I don't have priorities met in other arenas that I have responsibility in. So look at those three things and look in this sense about them. There's four things I just want to mention, and they're pretty common to your, probably if you think about it. What action do I need to take there? What is the first thing I need to do with that one? Let's say it's personal. What am I reading? Do I need to pick up something that would feed me in a certain way or help me develop in a certain way? What action? What priority is that? Is that the highest priority for me right now, or is there something else? Then how much time will that take, and how will I measure how that's going for me? So the sense is, what do I need to be doing? What's one of the first two or three things I ought to be investing my time and energy in? And then how do I know how things are going? Am I going to get feedback from others? Am I going to do a self-check? Whatever. But I throw a lot at you there for you to just sit back and pull some things that work for you. But how are you self-developing? That doesn't mean you're alone, but you're responsible for your own growth and development. Someone else isn't. And what do you need to pay attention to help grow as a leader? I have a free ebook for you if you would want it, and you just contact me at drbilldonahue.com. That's D-R-B-I-L-L. You don't have to spell doctor out, drbilldonahue.com. And I know the team said I could make this available to you. It's free. It's only 12 pages, an ebook on transforming leadership culture. It takes some of the ideas we've talked about today into a deeper level, and there's some interactive things that allow you to just really look at some of the categories. I couldn't address them all in our time. But do this self-reflection that you need to do and develop that plan that you need to develop. So I hope that will be helpful for you. There's free videos there and other things. Everything's free. So if that can serve you in some way, great. If not there, I hope somewhere that you're getting input and process around creating a transformational leadership culture. So let's be a force against the toxic, dangerous, hurtful, careless, ignorant, self-consumed leadership we see around us and maybe sometimes in us. And focus on Project Me in an appropriate way so that Project Me will impact Project We, which is the community I serve and love and care about and I'm developing. And so that the saying is still true that a changing life is necessary to change a life, and that it takes that changing life to change a life. But I would add this, it takes a changing leader to change a leadership culture. It takes a transformational, developing leader to transform a leadership culture. I know you can be that leader if you'll invest your time and energy to do so. I hope this has been helpful for you. It's great to have been with you. Thanks.